Hey my friend, welcome today and I thank you very much for watching another lesson from International DevOps Academy, where it's our biggest duty and pleasure to serve you on your own exciting DevOps journey. So today in this lesson I am going to share with you how you protect your DevOps deployment pipeline. And of course, DevOps deployment pipeline is not something you have to physically protect, but also you must ensure that you deploy necessary cultural elements in your IT, but also in your non-IT organization. So everyone in your organization, including the compliance officers, including lawmakers or security experts, your bosses, leaders, and everyone else will be on the same side of you to make sure that you develop and deliver as quick as this possible, and of course with highest quality possible. And with the customers that we day by day work, what we observed that in most of the times their difficulties to execute their DevOps agenda comes from these difficulties which are enabled in their culture. So obviously the organizations are good at bringing technical pieces together because they usually employ the best technical talents in their organizations, and they have most of the times the sufficient budget to buy the necessary tools and components. So on the technical side, building a DevOps tool chain is not a difficult task to do, to be honest. But then what happens is, as they have difficulties to do, low risk production deployments in shorter lead times and smaller batch sizes, they usually cause again issues in their production systems, and then they lose trust from the compliance officers in the IT, from the security officers in the IT, and then of course the bosses or the managers or the directors have also trouble against their business stakeholders. Then everything gets slowed down. And to make sure that this won't happen in your organization, you need to understand few concepts about how you can basically create a secure deployment pipeline by ensuring that you convert most of the changes in your organization into standard changes. And what does it mean? Now in this lesson we are going to discuss all the details about it. Okay, let's slowly get started. So as we discussed in the last previous lessons, you are able to build your deployment pipeline, right? We discussed about how to set up the necessary tool chain to make sure that you have the continuous integration, continuous test automation in place, and now you are going to be able to deploy all this code into the production, but also in your non-production systems without any hassle. And now, after you and your DevOps team build a working deployment pipeline for the continuous delivery of your IT organization by adhering to principles you have learned before, you are now empowered to do low-risk production deployments without external approvals. Now, majority of your production deployments don't need to go through a change approval process. This is because you put your reliance on proper design of your software delivery methodology, automated testing, automated monitoring, and intelligent alerts from your environments instead of merely relying on external authorities. And yet, bear in mind that security and compliance is still an important duty of your DevOps team. This is not only to fulfill requirements from lawmakers, but also to take good care of your clients. Of course, your DevOps team will still rely on and collaborate with security and compliance subject matter experts in your organization, and yet designing secure systems compliant within the legislation ecosystem your organization navigates should be now a daily task and habit of your organization. So in summary, what we try to say here is, in DevOps organization, you don't expect somebody else in your organization will take good care of your quality or compliance or security. Of course, you are going to collaborate with this, subject matter experts that you not 100% have in your own team, but still, as DevOps team, it's your own duty to facilitate all these approvals and creating all the tangible material and evidence to make sure that your application fulfills the required standards required by your InfoSec, information security experts, compliance experts, and of course the legal experts. And it's your duty to make sure that your software complies to all these factors. Do you know what can be the worst thing that happens just before the day of production deployment? This really happened to me. Once, one day before we deploy the code, the security officer, the InfoSec guy in the organization said to our team that, okay, this software cannot be deployed to production because of this security breaches, and they sent us back to the drawing board. Imagine how frustrating this was to our team, to our manager, to our client, because just before the day of go live, we've been sent to the drawing board to fix the security issues. This is because we haven't worked, in non-DevOps environment. We basically haven't consulted the security expert until the last minute. But with the new way of DevOps, you will have this, subject matter expertise already built in your team, and some of the engineers, some of the persons in your DevOps team will be day by day working with this, information security or compliance experts, so that if you have a security breach in your application, you will already, find this out before the day of production deployment, even, during your design or architecture, even during the conception cycle of your application, and then you will have a chance to quickly fix it, and you won't have, very ugly surprises just before the day of rollout. Now let's discuss type of changes in your production systems. So maybe I should say the last thing first, to make sure that these concepts will make sense to you, because our lesson is not about teaching you a type of changes in the IT ecosystem. I assume you are already familiar with them. But what I want to say by describing all these different change types is, in the end, you must convert all of your change types in your organization into standard changes. So I repeat this concept because it's so important that I can't overemphasize. In the end of the DevOps journey, you must be converting all of your changes, including normal changes or urgent changes, or if you have other types of changes into your organization, you need to be able to convert everything into standard changes. Now I'll discuss what these different types of changes are. So first off, standard changes. Standard changes are low-risk changes. They require no approvals. They are usually quick deployments because they are completely automated and logged. Updates of database lookup tables, content updates, styling changes, standard operating system database, or other external component patches are some of the standard changes. So in summary, they are low risk, mainly automated, quite well logged, and they are quite typical. They are usually planned and announced and everything, and therefore they can be automated 100%, and therefore they don't create any risk in your organization, and you don't get any permission. As DevOps team, this is also quite important. For standard updates, you do not require any approval to deploy standard changes, not only into your non-production systems, but also into your production systems. The second one, normal changes. So what are normal changes? Normal changes are relatively higher risk changes, and they require approval from CAP, so it's also called Change Advisory Board, and CAP expects request for change form, which is also called RFC, to assess changes, and they require long lead times because they have to read the document, they assess, and they usually ping pong the document between development teams, and then they have to understand all information to be able to enable them to give a correct decision. And they require long lead times usually because most of the times CAP members are not knowledgeable enough to assess changes. They hold changes to give decisions ultimately based on their experience, intuition, bias on who requested changes. It's also a very funny aspect because CAP members are also looking at who is requesting the change to be deployed in production system, and if they had very bad experience in the past for a certain team, it doesn't matter how good evidence you provide to begin with, they will be always skeptical to what you are doing. But in the end, there are also other teams which are also delivering usually high quality without any production incidents and issues, and then when they ask something to be deployed in their production systems, they get relatively quicker approvals from the CAP members, and therefore normal changes are usually tricky. You need to create documents and you need to submit them, you need to follow them up, you need to remind them, you need to usually escalate them even to get the CAP approve your changes so that you can deploy them to your production systems. Normal changes are already very cumbersome, which brings us to another even more cumbersome type of change, which is urgent changes. These urgent changes are even higher risk changes. They require approval from senior management and critical errors in production systems, which impact clients, which impact day-to-day activities of your business, and they are usually the fixes of problematic deployments or very high priority production incidents or security patches or security incidents or service restorations of our service restorations after critical incidents in your production systems are some examples of urgent changes. As you can imagine, urgent changes create a lot of trouble in organizations, create a lot of headache, a lot of stress, and therefore they usually happen, by the way, quite unexpected. This is why they are called urgent changes. And therefore in your organization, to be able to avoid urgent changes, you must be building your DevOps organization quite correctly. This is quite important. And regardless types of changes, you and your DevOps team need to document all changes in your change management and work planning systems. Either most of the companies use planning systems, either Remedy or Jira, so the work will be visible to everyone within and outside your DevOps team. So use track record now. Okay, these are different type of changes. Normal changes which require the approval from CAP, or urgent changes are even more critical. They are quite visible. Everybody looks at them, and they also require for approval from CAP and plus the senior management. And standard changes are very nice for the DevOps team because they don't require approval for anyone. We basically review them on our own as DevOps teams, and we can deploy them to our production systems without getting any approval from any external party. Because as DevOps team, we keep them in our loop, we keep them in our radar, we understand what is going on, and we review the code, and we understand what the impact of this code will be, because we already rehearsed this production deployment in a non-production environment, and therefore we are 99.9% confident that this automated deployment will not cause any incident in production system. And therefore, as DevOps team, our duty is to convert as many changes as is possible into standard changes. And now, okay, Erkan, it sounds fine, but how I am going to do this? And the next part of this lesson will give you some tips to explain how you will do so. Okay, first off, use track record of successful automated deployments history to convert normal changes into standard changes. Only by increasing the ratio of standard changes over normal changes, you can avoid change advisory board approvals, and you can enable faster flow and higher quality deployment pipeline. You and your DevOps team now use your history of successful automated deployments to convert as many normal changes as is possible into standard changes. You shall cap your track record of deployments, list of production incidents, and prove them your automated production deployments caused none or only negligible incidents in your production systems. Speed up deployments of normal changes. For the changes which must still remain normal, automate composition process of request for change form, link all automated and non-automated test results, result and non-result incidents, monitoring records and logs from non-production systems to RFC. Try to simplify CAP's job and provide all information they are looking for in the first version of RFC, so you speed up CAP approvals as much as is possible. Once approved, enable one-click deployments of normal changes. Regularly review type of normal changes with CAP, identify and define expectations from CAP experts, which will convince them to convert normal changes into standard changes, so that you can automatically deploy majority of your changes in your organization. So here basically the tip that I try to give here is, of course, you can't basically announce everything as standard change from today to tomorrow. You will still have normal changes which will require approval from CAP. Then what you need to do is create great RFC documents which contains everything that your CAP is looking for, and then regularly sit with CAP experts together, or with their team leads, or with their single point of contacts, to understand what kind of info they need to release some normal changes into standard changes. So you need to work with them quite productively and closely to understand what their expectations are, because the less amount of normal changes you have in your organization, this will not only simplify and speed up your job as your DevOps team, but this will also simplify the job of your CAP expert even more, so that they can focus on more critical aspects in their organization to reduce the quality of daily job. And another thing is reducing bureaucracy and reliance on others in your DevOps organization is another key factor. You should I've been keep on repeating this in all of my lessons or live video classes. DevOps teams are intelligent units with mission, and they don't rely on others, because they're supposed to be autonomous teams, self-sufficient teams to get the jobs done. You can think, regardless you work for a startup company or not, it doesn't matter. You could be, a DevOps team in a 50,000 people organization. It really doesn't matter. But your 10 to 15, people of your DevOps team should still act like a startup, a small team with a mission to deliver with great quality, so that they can avoid, all bureaucracy and relies on others, and they can get the job done. This is quite critical. Now, I'm going to explain how you are going to do this. The bigger an organization gets, the more food the bureaucracy finds for itself. Bureaucracy has invisible ability to grow exponentially and live forever. Once you rely on authority and control mechanisms one level above you to approve your own job, you will no longer feel empowered and responsible for the outcomes of your own job. This makes the authority one level above you regularly fail, and then they will need another level of authority. It's quite funny. Unless you have the full ownership of the quality, unless you outsource the quality some others, you will never get optimal results. Last week I've been eating lunch with one of my friends who work for one of the largest banks in Switzerland. It's an international bank here. I'm not talking a small bank. I'm talking a bank which has like about 150,000 employees worldwide. And this bank outsourced their quality assurance into another country to save costs. How ridiculous is this, isn't it? You can't basically outsource an activity such as quality assurance into someone else, and then the developers or the engineers or the whatever methodology they use will think, okay, there is a authority there, there is a competence there which will validate my code, my application, and then they will be freed from taking the responsibility. And then you should avoid this. You should avoid making your teams comfortable, and they should make them stop relying on others. They should be taking the responsibility to deliver great work. And finally, what happens is you will have an authority, and then as you create troubles, your authority will be also in trouble, and then they will also need another level of authority to get audited as well. And this downward spiral gets only longer until the next reorganization in your company. And after reorganization, chances are almost 100% that a new downward spiral with slightly other form will replace your actual downward spiral. So your company needs to remember that separation of duties and reliance on control mechanisms outside your own team will not only slow down and reduce the quality of your software delivery flow, but also they make your organization less secure. There's a very typical example about this. A major US finance organization became victim of an ATM fraud due to backdoor a software developer of their own built in their ATM, the automated teller machine, automated cashier machine software. And none of the external auditors, external security experts, external compliance officers, and external CAP authority figures could manage to identify the fraudulent source code deployed into their production systems. This fraudulent code could have been only identified within the team. It was developed by deploying fundamental DevOps techniques such as inspection of code check-ins, peer reviews, and code reviews. Otherwise, such a tricky, fraudulent code cannot be, identified by an external, auditor. It can be only identified within the team itself. And in order to deliver quickly and securely, you need to reduce reliance on others and separation of duties, because they will only prevent your DevOps team from taking responsibility. In your DevOps team, you need to deploy other control mechanisms such as inspection of code check-ins, pair programming, peer reviews, automated testing, and monitoring. If separation of duties are mandatory due to legal reasons, your built-in controls in your DevOps team will still empower auditors and compliance officers to give better, informed, and faster decisions. So here what I'm trying to say is, although due to legal reasons, due to legislation ecosystem your organization works or has to work, even though you may need external authorities, compliance officers or lawyers to come and check your material, to come and check your software, you still need to empower your team to have the full ownership. Then they will enable the external authority figures to do their jobs quicker, and this will also make your deployment pipeline safer, faster, and quicker. These are important points that you should adapt in the cultural aspects of your organization and in your DevOps team. So, conclusion of this video lesson. So, DevOps brings a new and dynamic dimension for compliance and information security, where your infrastructure is code, when code makes your systems appear and disappear, and where your code is automatically deployed. It's not a trivial process for auditors to understand what is really going on. This is a new challenge, but as well as an opportunity to create and deploy leaner and smarter auditing and complying mechanisms and officers. In your DevOps team, information security, compliance, quicker deployments pipeline are now everyone's job. It's not only somebody else's or a few members of your team's job. It's the complete DevOps team's job. It's a major goal for your DevOps team to enable compliance officers to access all self-service information, logs, reports, metrics, which prove high quality delivery of your DevOps team. This will simplify bureaucratic approval processes, or even better altogether, hopefully at someday they will also remove all these approval processes and your team will own all the changes as standard changes. So in this lesson, I tried to cover for you how do you protect your DevOps deployment pipeline. And in the next lesson, our subject will be how do you ensure your DevOps information security. And for now, I thank you a lot. Take care and bye-bye. Now I am closing the lesson. Goodbye.